So good afternoon, everybody. If it is not already obvious from the title of my talk, I am a scientist, and I will try not to bore you too much with scientific minutiae today, although it is a well-known fact that ability as a scientist and ability to public speak are inversely proportional. So I'm a member of the Astellas Research Institute of America, ARIA, as it's known colloquially. And we're in a sort of far-flung part of the Astellas empire. So I wanted to start by talking a little bit about what we do. We are involved in early discovery and translational research for CNS diseases, primarily psychiatric diseases and neurological disorders. My training is in stem cell biology. And when I first heard about this talk series, I didn't think I would have much to contribute that would be of general interest. That was until I started to think about the true purpose of these talks, and one of them is to take a different way of looking at something that we know well but take for granted. And I started to think, with my expertise in developmental biology, maybe there was something that I would be able to bring here and sort of teach you a little bit about how to view life through the lens of a developmental biologist, and talk about how to apply it to life a little bit. So, when we think of life, we have a fairly static image of it. It's fairly well known. We all start off with limitless potential, with nothing really set to us yet. We're a blank slate, and as we go through, we're always chasing daylight, trying to make our mark, trying to leave a legacy for ourselves. Everyone in this room is here because they're smart and driven, and they're all doing the things that we think we should all do. We're all on this path that is prescribed for us either by ourselves, our inner drive, by society, all of this. And if we do everything right and we get a little bit of luck on the way, we wind up a wrinkly old person in a nursing home reflecting on all of this accomplishment, and that's where our story ends. And there's nothing wrong with this story. It's compelling and it's certainly accurate. However, as a developmental biologist, I can tell you that this part of the story pales in comparison to another part of your life that you never ever think about, and that is the 40 weeks between conception and birth. As a developmental biologist, I can tell you that this is prime time for when things happen. This is the coolest part of your life, biologically. You go from a single cell, which is virtually invisible, to, in about 9.5 months, being 40 trillion cells. Now, that's just a big number, but let's put that in perspective. If you continued to grow at the same rate you do during gestation, after you were born, by your first birthday, you would weigh more than the entire population of India combined. It's pretty impressive. And if the size aspect of it doesn't do anything for you, the complexity is definitely something that's even more amazing. You go from one cell that's sort of a jack of all trades, totally unspecialized, and in less than a year, it goes to more than 200 different cell types. All of them are assorted into organs, into a body plan, and all of these work together to keep you alive in this delicate spinning plate ballet that, if we're lucky, lasts for more than a century. This is a really cool process, very cool. And it's evolved over millions of years. And the very fact that our species still exists tells us that something is going on that is absolutely right. So, as a curious guy, I can't help but ask myself, what can we take from this and apply to our own lives? Well, to understand that, you would need an advanced understanding of developmental biology. And since we don't have several years to teach on this, I have hacked it and I have boiled it down into just one slide, and you will all be experts, almost PhD levels by the time we're done with this next slide. So, developmental biology, for all its complexities, can be boiled down to two things. These two things are critical periods and signaling networks. Now, I want to explain each of them in turn. A critical period, as the name suggests, is a little window that opens up where an important biological decision is made. If you imagine yourself driving a car, when you come to an intersection that goes into two one-way streets, you can turn left, you can turn right, but once you make that turn, you can't go back to the original intersection. You are committed to that path. Using a more appropriate example, imagine that you have a marble at the top of a hill. Gravity pulls it downwards and it encounters a bump. It can go one way or the other. And depending on which way it goes, other little bumps and swales come into play, so that marble, when it reaches the bottom of the hill, can be at one of several different places, but it all depends on where it goes at that first turn. That's a critical period. It's that simple. Now, critical periods don't work in isolation. Signaling networks are an integral part of this. Now, this is a complicated looking diagram, but it's very simple, sort of. Signaling networks in biology are proteins, small molecules, and other factors that float around the cell, creating a local environment. And in development, it determines which way the car turns. Does it go left? Does it go right? And these little nudges are imperative in shaping us. It may be better to explain with an example. Sex determination is a great example of critical periods and signaling networks working together. Sex determination occurs 11 days after you're conceived, and it affects everything from your musculature, your size, your brain development. All of this occurs, and you're set down the left or the right pathway at this 11-day point. And when this period opens up, for all the complexity in it, the signaling network that controls whether male or female sex occurs is just one thing. There's a factor encoded on the Y chromosome. If it's present, male. If not, female. Signaling networks, critical periods together. Every decision, every bit of you, from the topmost fold of your cranial brain surface to the development of your toes, all controlled by that. Okay, that's enough biology. Now you're all experts. What does this mean to us? What does it mean to us in our daily lives? How is this possibly relevant? After all, we've all been born, this period is all over, and biologically speaking, things have cooled down quite a bit. Well, maybe not. I would argue, from my perspective, that critical periods and signaling networks still exist. They just take different forms. They're not biological anymore. They're social, they're anthropological, they're circumstantial. If you consider through the lens of a developmental biologist your life as a whole, you'll see there are many critical periods. When you walk into school on the first day, the person you sit next to and become friends with will have an outsized influence on your life. Where you decide to work, whether you're enrolled in ballet or whether you sign up for soccer classes, all of these can steer you down any of these different pathways. And by the time you reach your end of your life, you can easily wind up in different places based on these very early decisions. So again, like biology, none of this occurs in a vacuum. We have networks around us. Only instead of biological networks, we have influencers, okay? Friends, family, coworkers, all of these have amazing similarities to what happens in the biology of your cells. All the way down to the fact that your closest those closest to you have the strongest influence. The local signaling network is the strongest. Those that we surround ourselves with, like here at Astellas, have immense impact just on ourselves. So these things don't go away, and this is my main point, but I also want to talk a little bit about what this means to us as Astellas employees. Now, in biology and sociology, you might not think there's much in common. But Astellas is very unique. We have an outsized influence in that at the core of our business is the efficacious delivery of drugs to people. We are affecting them in both their biological critical periods and socially. Our drugs come into people's lives at the most critical life or death points and have massive ability to affect people. This is not to say that it's the only thing we do. The social implications of Astellas have a far reach as well. And to conclude, I'd kind of like to share a personal story about this. I had never heard of Astellas before I came to work here. I'd never taken a drug made by Astellas. I'd never met an employee. But yet Astellas came into my life many years before I wound up working here, unknowingly to me at the time. I had just finished college, and this is, of course, a critical period. And I was casting about for my first job, maybe thinking about going back to school. And I received a phone call from a family member that a different family member had a major medical crisis that would probably require lifelong treatment and affect them their entire lives. And this was part of the local signaling network that sort of nudged me into medical research. So flash forward 10 years later, I finished my training as a scientist. I'm casting about for my first job, another critical period, of course. And I'm at a family reunion, and I'm just casually listing off a few options to some family members. And I mentioned a Japanese pharma company with a weird name that I'd never really heard of before. And the same family member who had this medical crisis is there. Their face lights up and they're like, I know them. And I'm like, how? And they said that they make the drug that I took, that I still take. And this isn't a shove, but it was a nudge. And this brings me around to my final point. You know, all of these subtle influences over time push me right here to this stage, pushed all of you in the audience and watching now, right where we are. And we need to understand that in addition to being acted on by our environment, we are also capable of signaling. And that, in our position, is a very important thing that we need to keep with us every day. Thank you very much.